It's time for Matthew Archbold. Good morning, Matthew.
He is the salve for our show.
Yeah,
Hello,
Good
Matthew.
morning. Where are you guys?
you're doing okay. How about you, sir? And
We're doing well. It's one thing you said, Jesus wept, and it's sort of an interesting thing in that when the guards came for Jesus, who was it? Peter,
Right.
who took the sword out,
yeah,
and and he went at it, and I think that's one of the things we all have to check in ourselves as well.
yeah.
Right.
We want to take the sword out and go at this, and I think that's a very bad instinct, and but it's something I see, and a lot of people are using this awful tragedy as a way to further their own agenda, and I really wish they just wouldn't do that in this case.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
talking earlier. It's difficult as Catholics, as Christians, to not automatically hate what happened. Who did this, and we do need to counter hate with love, and we just need to remind ourselves of that.
So much of this is, look, they're all saying, all the media, the New York Times this morning, that the motive is unknown, and everyone's saying that let's be honest, the motive is pretty clear, at this point. Why we'll never know exactly why something like this happens, but what we're seeing is a mental illness epidemic among our young, and we have to respond to that. By ignoring that and making it politics as usual, and talking about guns, it's just so beside the point. We have to focus on our young people. They're committing suicide at an epidemic rate. They're addicted to pharmacological drugs at a rate we've never seen before. This trans thing is taking off, and it's being nurtured instead of healed, and and we're using our children for a narrative instead of trying to heal them, and then we wonder why we're getting things like this happening. It's awful what we're doing.
Matthew, I think you hit it there because this, all the things that I've been involved in over the years, what we try to do is deal with a symptom, not the cause. And I see it in everything. I'm part of the women's health movement in the Catholic Church, and and that's even what medicine has done. It just deals with symptoms, not causes. And the reason I think, and I'd like to get your take on this because it fits this, is that that's a quick, easy fix. We can say we did something and then move on, instead of really getting to the cause and healing it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, and I think it's easy to hey, see, I was right all along. I always said we needed to do this. I'm the prophet here. I'm the one who's been saying all along we needed to do this. This is just more evidence, and whereas this should be a time for us all to reflect and really try to come to the truth of what's going on in our country. And something as simplistic as, okay, let's take away something, it's just, it doesn't work, and it's awful and it's sad. And, one of the things that is kind of getting ignored here is that the frequency of attacks against Catholic churches, according to Catholic Vote, there have been over 500 arsons, vandalizations since 2020 against Catholic churches. And now we've had a number of shootings against Christian schools and Catholic schools. It's time we focus on this and say, okay, there is something real going on here. That believers, Christians, are being targeted. And I think we're not at the point in our culture right now where we're even close to talking about that in our media or our politicians.
Yeah, look, and we have one enemy, right? The evil one is the enemy, and he has victims. I mean,
100%.
there are victims of the evil one, and it is our responsibility as the members of the body of Christ to do as our reading said today, to give the food at the proper time and in the proper amount. And if we're not doing that, you just have to think, if someone had intervened, if someone was speaking truth when these difficulties came up, when these questions came up, if someone would just speak the truth of the gospel and of Jesus Christ, he truly is the answer to all of this. But those of us who know him must be bold enough to speak it forward.
Absolutely. And with all these kids that are out there in pain, they're one whispered word maybe away from accepting the gospel at all times. And, instead we see them as, they're on the other side, and, we have to reach out because everyone has to hear the good news. And I think of, it's so torturous thinking of this young person going through what they were going through, night after night, horror after horror. This person was miserable and tearing themselves apart and finally acting out in a horrible, tragic way. And you just think to yourself, if someone could have spoken the truth to this young person and sought help for them and guided them, the world would be a very different place. So we really do have to double down on preaching the good news, because it really is the good news.
Yeah, we're so reticent to speak out and to reach out because, we think, well, this is a private thought that I have. I don't want to impose that on anybody else.
Right.
We have a duty to do that just as human beings.
Yeah.
And how many conversion stories have you heard where people talk about it, where someone came up to them at a moment and said exactly the right thing that they needed to hear? And so many times they say, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but something in me is telling you need to hear this. And you hear about that. And we've all had that happen to us. But sometimes we swallow it and we don't say what we should have said. And the world is a darker place because of it. My daughter was driving home the other day, and she saw someone at a roadside memorial, one of those awful things, and she said she felt called to stop and pray with this person.
Oh my goodness!
And and she stopped and prayed with this person, and they had a real engagement. Now, as a father, I want to tell her, don't ever do that again.
Yeah, right.
You don't, it was nighttime. Are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
Like, but that's what I wanted to tell her. But she also said I felt called to do it. So I'm like, okay, but try to only feel called in the daytime and right spaces,
Between this hour and that hour.
When I'm there.
Yeah,
That's right.
Oh, Matthew, I'll tell you got some wonderful insights at creativeminorityReport.com. So check that out. And thank you so much for letting us get into your mind a little bit this morning, Matthew. Have a great day.
Thank you, Matthew.
God bless, guys.
Bye, Matt.